Well, there seems to be some light in the darkness of the country's power crisis. The country has been experiencing lower blackout stages recently. Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says that's because government's energy action plan is yielding results. Ramokgopa was giving an update on the state of the grid a little earlier today. Energy expert Ruse Moleshe joins us now for more. Ruse, thank you so much, as always, for your time. We speak to you regularly when we get updates on the Energy Action Plan or when there's significant movement in the energy landscape. This week, we've seen a reduction in blackout stages, and the Electricity Minister is saying they've seen lower than expected demand. Yet, we are in the middle of winter when we expect demand to be exceptionally high. What do you think that can be attributed to?
Good evening to you and good evening to the listeners, to the viewers. In terms of demand, obviously we haven't had a winter that's very extremely cold at this point, but we do expect that when winter intensifies, that the demand, especially the peak demand, will increase as well to at least above 30 to 32,000 megawatts. Right now it's sitting at 29,000 megawatts. So it hasn't been that cold. We are not wearing very heavy clothes just yet, but we will see. I think when winter kicks in properly, we will see a significant increase in that demand.
Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa also saying the Energy Action Plan is yielding results. Is that what you're seeing as well, that we're getting better at balancing demand and generation capacity?
I wouldn't say that too much, but yes, there are some areas of improvement with the energy availability factor at around 60%. That Eskom has some improvement that we see there. Whether or not it continues, that's what we will wait and see. We also must note that from a maintenance point of view, that there's a reduction in planned maintenance, which typically happens in winter. So some of that has contributed. We expect that them to go back to significant maintenance work in summer. Also, to their credit, and unplanned outages have also been reduced. So there are various areas. The wind energy is also producing relatively more, because in winter you have a relatively colder weather and you have more coming out of wind. So that there's a variety of things. Where you can pinpoint some improvement is definitely on energy availability factor.
I want to take a step back and address what you said about maintenance. There's less planned maintenance happening during winter, and that sort of happens as a rule. But given where we are in our electricity and energy crisis, can we afford to reduce the amount of maintenance we're doing?
That's a good question, because maintenance is one of the key elements that we are saying is required for us to be able to have energy availability factor increasing. So it's important for that maintenance not to be reduced to an extent that sustainability beyond winter is a challenge. So I guess Eskom is trying to find a balance to be able to do that. It is not an easy thing to do.
And look, while I'm sure all South Africans are glad of the respite now, we don't want to have to pay for it later. And the same is true with diesel costs. And we're relying more on open cycle gas turbines to reduce stages of load shedding, but we know how much diesel costs. Do you see us paying for that later?
Yeah, diesel is very much at an unsustainable level in terms of our consumption. But if we have unplanned outages and we have an increased maintenance, we are going to have to deal with diesel unless we get to a point where we significantly increase our supply side options. So for as long as we don't have that, and hopefully with the Kusile 3 units that are likely to come in the future around December of this year, and another unit 5 at Kusile, Medupi also next year, hopefully that will give us enough buffer for us to be able to reduce both diesel and also and also increase our maintenance. But it all depends on what happens between now and then. From my perspective, countries generally have a reserve margin that is significant. We don't have that. So I think that we still need to make sure that the additional supply side options, besides the units that are expected to come back online, to be able to have a proper buffer, then we can start talking about load shedding being something of the past.
And creating that buffer, requires investment. We've been told about a massive surge of private investment in electricity generation, which continues to outstrip expectations. Is this private investment all transparent and in the public domain to be scrutinized and understood?
Yes, the public investment luckily will not rely on any guarantees from government and all of that. So the private sector can do what they want with that. The good thing is that they have the capital that is required to be able to deal with these projects without putting a burden on government. But we should note that this is a pipeline of projects. It's not projects that are coming online immediately, at least not all of them. So when we talk about a huge, significant pipeline of projects, it's just that, a pipeline. There still has to be a construction period before you see these projects coming online in a significant, with significant capacity. We also should note that from a grid perspective, there is a constraint. So to the extent that we have a constraint with the grid, not all of the projects may see fruition within this relatively short space of time. So we talk about them, we celebrate them, but there are limitations. And also there are limitations in the sense that you have intermittent capacity from renewable energy projects, which is why I'm talking about a reserve margin that should be able to back these projects when they are not able to produce as we expect them to.
In terms of what you said about they are reliant on the grid being there to support them, what are we seeing in terms of progress in stabilizing that grid? Is that very much reliant on the maintenance work being done, or is that a generation issue and this is a transmission issue?
So basically we have a limited capacity with respect to the grid. If you look at the Northern Cape, is one of the areas that has significant resources in terms of the solar resources. However, when it comes to the grid infrastructure, there isn't sufficient infrastructure. So the projects have to move to other areas like Free State and Mpumalanga, which is relatively less resources. So Eskom has to invest in additional grid capacity to enable the projects to connect and transmit the power to where it's supposed to go.
So we're talking to Cape Town Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis a little bit later in the show about their wheeling capacity that's hopefully expected to come online in Cape Town within the next month or so. What do you make of the progress that they've made in the Western Cape, seemingly to unburden people from load shedding?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that they at least have looked at the rules for wheeling so that those who are able to construct projects and to be able to have capacity that can be used in the system know exactly what will be required from them to be able to connect. Because wheeling means that you basically have a IPP project that's sitting on the other side and needs to sell power to a client on the other side of the line. And all they need is a person that will facilitate for that transmission of that capacity. So it's important to know what the rules are. It's important to know what the charges will be for those entrepreneurs to develop those projects.
Do you think it's realistic to expect that kind of a model to be scaled out nationally within the next year or two?
Yes, I think there are a number of municipalities and other players that are looking at the frameworks in terms of the grid rules for IPPs. So the law allows for third-party access to the transmission network. So I don't see a constraint in terms of people being able to do that. So as long as the rules have been set and there's capacity to transmit.
Well, thank you very much again for your time. Always great to get some insights from you. That was energy expert Ruse Moleshe.